Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com. In this video, I'm going to be discussing what to do when we have to work with an extremely clipped vocal. And really what I'm about to outline actually is going to apply to any source that has been inadvertently clipped in a pretty apparent way, but I think if I were to pick one source where it's going to be most offensive, probably vocals. So we've got this really clipped vocal, what do we do? I don't know, let's play this for a second.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that, and what about the people them are starving who don't eat no food from morning? Everybody looking for.
So I would say that clipping is pretty offensive. I'm kind of surprised that it actually wasn't addressed in the tracking phase, but it wasn't, and this is how I got it, so this is what I got to work with.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that, and
it sounds like it's being like mildly put through an overdrive pedal, so definitely problematic. Now, I think that the first instinct is to highlight our clipped section, go to something like Isotope RX, declip, set it up so that we're catching the very upper peaks of it, you know, set to high quality because we want the highest quality, and then render, right? And sure enough, we get our peaks right back, and suddenly we have something that sounds like this.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that.
And it still sounds distorted, right? So Isotope RX is a great program, don't get me wrong, but it is not always going to save everything, and this vocal is one of those cases where it's clipped a little bit too strong, so there's not much we're going to be able to do about it in terms of declipping it. I think that in a number of years, this video will age out, and that there will be technology developed that can handle severe clipping like this, but if it's out there, I don't have it yet. Alright, so let's play it again.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that, and
so what are we going to do? Okay, well the first thing that we can try to do is mitigate, right? There's a harshness to it, and we can certainly ease that off just with some clever EQ. First of all, if we're going to EQ, chances are something that's that clipped is going to have some pretty heavy sub buildup, just as like a natural artifact of it. So I would say if we're doing any auto-tuning or pitch correction on the vocal, before we get to that, we want to do some high passing because that'll eliminate some glitches that might occur.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that.
And sure enough, you can see it even on the graph. There's some pretty serious sub buildup, so glad we're getting rid of that. Now, once we go through the auto-tuning, then we start to target our harsh frequencies, and I found that there was some pretty offensive stuff at around 3.5 to 3.7, and then there was also a little bit of just a little bit too much 1K, and so easing those things off certainly helps.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this.
And then lastly, we've got a couple little other things that I'm taking out over here.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that.
And if I take those effects off.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this.
It's definitely, here, we can actually level match it a little tighter. Probably more like this. It's definitely a little less offensive.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that.
But the reality is that fuzzy quality is still there. Now, here is what I would say. And this is a very Weiss advice concept and ideology here. So, when we hear distorted guitars, a distorted guitar is not natural to the way a guitar is intended to sound, not originally at least. It's become stylistically very customary to hear that in styles of music like rock and really many other styles of music at this point. Distortion in and of itself is not inherently a bad thing. The problem here is that the distortion doesn't sound appropriate. So my solution to this, and I believe the best solution to this, is to have a very frank conversation with the artist and producer to say, hey, there is some really extreme clipping in this. Now, I can simply try to make the best of it through EQ, but it's going to be there. But with a little bit of innovation and just a little bit of stylistic decision making, instead of trying to mitigate the distortion, instead of trying to eliminate the distortion, a more effective approach might be to use the distortion and make it as if it was intended to be part of the sound and a stylistic choice. Can we use the distortion that's in there to become artful? Now, there are going to be some times where maybe that's just not an option, but in my experience with music likes distortion. Imperfection is emotional. And so here, the content of Kabaka's vocal here, if we just listen to the lyrics for a moment.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that and what about the people them are starving?
The lyrical content doesn't have to sound particularly friendly. It's about struggle, and it's also about ignoring just being a better person and just finding the good in the world. So we can have a distorted vocal that feels like it's in context. So with that said, the problem here is that the context sounds like it's in too much of a pop record. The way that the record is laid out, while it does have a kind of reggae-ish syncopation, it really does sound more like a pop record. Now, what if we just choose a couple key elements and distort them as well? So maybe like this big snare hit, for example. Right, that doesn't have to be clean. Let's throw this through some overdrive. Yeah, let's see if this feels a little better.
Fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that and what about the people them are starving? Who don't eat no food from morning? Everybody looking for change but not take no action.
You notice how the vocal starts to feel more appropriate? So I'm smiling because I know this works and that I've done this before, and it's a really cool feeling when you start getting it right, because you're basically solving the impossible if you can manage to make the right artistic decisions. Now, I would say that the other thing that kind of needs to be a little dirtier is probably this piano. This piano is super, super clean sounding. It's really nice sounding. But it's just too pristine. So I think that by pushing some drive into it, I'm here using the London Virtual Tube Collection here, and I'm using it with this mix knob. I'll just break down the chain here. So I'm using trimmer to drive into saturation. I'll turn the mix all the way up. Maybe even want to push it more. Yeah, let's do that, and let's back this off some. Yeah, right about there. And let's do about half of that. And then using this FG Dynamics, and I'm actually using it to get more punch from the attack of the piano. So it's a little weird. I'm using this compressor to actually get more attack. Usually we think of compressors as something that we could use to soften the attack, but it's doing the opposite. And then a little makeup gain would make it pretty apparent what I'm doing. But we don't need makeup gain because we want to match it to the original anyway, so without it, with. In fact, actually, I'm going to pull down some output. There we go. Yeah, just a little lo-fi fuzz on it. Now, let's put it all together.
Yes, everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that and what about the people them are starving? Who don't eat no food from morning?
The last little bit of this trick, I think, is going to be just hiding the vocal a little bit more than I would do a typical pop vocal. So going back to this piano here, I'm actually going to turn this back up again, and I'm going to let the vocal sit inside the piano maybe just a little bit more than what I typically would, just so that it all kind of smears together and runs together a little bit.
Yes, everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that and what about the people them are starving? Who don't eat no food from morning? Everybody looking for change but not take no.
Now when I go through the rest of the mix, I have this very concrete idea that's laid out in front of me. There's a certain amount of dirt and grit that's in there that now feels appropriate for the track. And now when we listen to the vocal, we might not even notice that it feels off or wrong. We might just hear the record as being a little bit gritty sounding. And I think that that's okay, and I think that it works.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that and what about the people them are starving who don't eat no food from
You gotta admit, that's pretty cool, right? In fact, we can even set this up, just even right here on this very first fill. If we just break that up, we put some distortion on that right away. I'm just gonna do a hack and slash distortion on here. Here's a good one. If we just throw a basic distortion on here. Yeah. Cool. There we go. If we set it up already to have some distortion right ahead of time, we already are going to tell the ear that this is where we're going with the record and that this is the emotional intention.
Nowadays everybody fighting for this and marching for that and protesting this and talking about that and what about the people them are starving who don't eat no food from morning.
Now, obviously, the discerning ear that understands distortion, you, me, we're going to hear the distortion in this very clearly, but the average listener isn't going to hear it as being wrong now. All right, guys, I thought I would point that out because I want to expand your ideas in terms of how to handle problems. Sometimes, if we're a little bit lucky and we're a little bit crafty, we can turn a tragedy into a triumph. All right, if you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, join the channel, hit that subscribe with the bell notification. If you have any ideas, tell me about how you've handled heavily distorted vocals or really any source, maybe things that aren't supposed to be distorted, pianos, basses, whatever it might be, times that you've encountered that and how you've tried to deal with it. Drop that in the comment section below. I want to hear what you guys have had to interact with and deal with. Maybe that'll inspire another video from me. There's something else. Yeah, hit the share button if you think anybody else will benefit from it. And lastly, you know what we say. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.